No way that he or the cabal of corporate interests, spy agencies, and shadow bankers that tell him what to do would ever mislead us.
And here with reaction to this and much more, the co-hosts of The Five, Bob Beckel and Andrea Tantaros. Welcome both of you. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Look, 2/3 of Americans now back Putin's plan, Bob, over the president. What does that tell you?
Well, it's not. I mean, it's much the president's plan as Putin's plan. I mean, I don't think that. Look, one thing happened. He spoke last night, and the first initial polls out was that the people's support for his plan jumped 20 to 25%. I think it's a good plan. You don't have to go to war that way. You know, I mean, so you.
But it's
you
not
guys
the president's plan. I mean,
it was John Kerry's the one who put it on the table.
All right, now hang on a second. I knew you were going to say that. Immediately when John Kerry said that if they give back the weapons, we could do that, the White House ran out and said, oh, no, he didn't mean that. It was rhetorical. It was a major goof. He clearly had gone off script.
Well, he went off script, but he's having to stumble into a pretty good idea, and Putin picked up on it, which was smart.
Stumbled. That's great foreign policy. Stumble into it.
We're just going to stumble into ideas and hope that when John Kerry's flossing in the morning, maybe it just comes to him and he just blurts it out. I call it Brainfart foreign policy. That's now a moment of brilliance. You heard a spokeswoman. You just mentioned it. It's rhetorical. Then the week before, remember when he talked about boots on the ground? He said he was just thinking out loud. So I guess we're just going to do foreign policy by gaffe and hope and cross our fingers that it works out.
And the president mentions a red line, but it's not his red line.
Don't you guys want to see this gas get out of Syria and not have to commit American power to it?
Here's the problem.
I want strength.
It's not an American plan. It's a Russian plan. And I don't know why all of a sudden Vladimir Putin is somebody that we can trust. He's in the diplomatic driver's seat. He specifically did this to humiliate President Obama. I mean, when Vladimir Putin seized on this idea, the first thing that it told me was that at that G20 meeting when they spent hours together, nothing came out of it. So they said they've been discussing this for years, Bob. Then why did Vladimir Putin all of a sudden jump on this after
years? On the Five last week, you put down a paper, a 100-page Russian proposal about why the opposition did this tear gas. So I'd be a little bit careful if I were you.
Real quick, that makes my point. Vladimir Putin, up until this point, was even denying that Assad had chemical weapons, and all of a sudden now, we trust that he's being honest?
But he's not going to be the one taking him out.
Here's a problem. Putin and the Russians were right on the Boston bombers.
Yes, they were.
He's right about, when he called John Kerry a liar, actually it was Putin who was right about who the rebels really are, not John Kerry. And the other thing is, when he offered to send ships and create a missile shield for Syria and now may provide weapons to Iran, that tells me that he wants to poke America's eye because I think he sees a weak American president.
Not putting him. There happens to be a Soviet military naval base in Syria. That's where those boats were going. They usually go back to a base, you know. It's a funny thing. But ships need to get into a base.
He threatened to shoot our missiles out of the sky,
He's not going to do that. Look, the UN will take
the UN that just President Obama said a couple days ago would not be likely those UN inspectors to actually get the weapons out. Now, all of a sudden, they've changed their mind yet again.
You know, if you know something about poison gases and chemical weapons, there are detectors that find them. So the idea that they're going to hide them. Look, you guys last week were all in this big right-wingers were all saying, oh, the opposition did it to each other so that they could, blame Assad for it. When we found out there was an intercept from the command of the Syrian army directly to their frontline forces saying, put on your gas mask, this stuff's coming.
The Germans have an intercept that says that Assad himself said, don't use chemical weapons.
They came from the Syrian military. That's what we know.
Was it the Syrian Free Army that apparently Kerry is putting so much hope in?
No, the Syrian Free Army that was bombed. It is not that.
So why aren't we bombing Al-Qaeda? If we're going to launch missiles in there. No, we're not even talking about Al-Qaeda, our enemy that's actually in Syria as well.
And Bob,
of them. You point to all these right-wingers. Oh, just last week. Oh, what about just last administration when all you left-wingers were screaming and wailing about going into Iraq? Now, all of a sudden, this is the moral high ground we must take.
It was a terrible mistake.
Answer her question.
It's a terrible mistake. It was a terrible mistake to go into Iraq then. It's a terrible mistake to be in Iraq. The whole thing was a mistake. And then we bring Donald Rumsfeld out to give his view about intelligence. That dude has as much intelligence as a donkey.
How is this different? How is one dictator using WMD different than another?
He's not. Listen. There have been two people before Assad, and you guys don't want to take it out, Hitler and Hussein. Now you guys want to just say, go ahead, let them use his chemical weapons. It is a disaster for the national security of the United States.
What about the other 100,000 that died before the use of chemical weapons?
They didn't die with chemical weapons, and there weren't 2 treaties that were dictating them.
How about the 4 Americans that died
so
today 1 year ago?
It just matters to you liberals how they die. It doesn't matter that the number that are slaughtered.
We're not going to get in the middle of a civil war in Syria. What it matters is that we signed a treaty and we signed a covenant in 1920 and in 1992 that said that chemical warfare was not acceptable.
Where's the rest of the world, Bob, except for maybe
162 countries.
Where are they now? Where are they?
I think you'll find that there'll be a.
Where's the evidence that it was Assad and not the rebels?
Where?
Where?
There was an intercept from the command of the Syrian army, Assad's army, to the frontline troops.
That contradicts the German intercept.
I don't care what the Germans said. This was our intelligence that we got. Now, you're usually one who supports our intelligence community. And it said, put your gas mask on. And 10 minutes later, these bombs went over. Now, what does that tell you? You know, that's if you don't believe that's telling the truth, then you believe O.J. Simpson was innocent.
Bob, I don't know how this does anything but give Assad free reign to be the devil and let Putin control the region, control the airspace, control the naval base.
That's the danger.
He can commit human rights atrocities.
The Russians haven't controlled that region for 30 years.
Their biggest customers are Iran and Assad. They've been selling weapons.
They're now filling the void.
They
will now fill America's void.
There's one way to do this, by the way. We ought to go to Iran, and we ought to, with Israel, we ought to take out their nuclear weaponization.
Amen. Very good idea.
What happens if Assad starts using other means to persecute and kill his people? Then what? Are we going to go in?
War. No, it's a civil war.
Okay.
We're not. But he used chemical weapons. Do you understand that? If he gets away with using chemical weapons, anybody else who has them will use them as well.
I just want to be clear. So did Saddam Hussein. Now I think I'm more.